the purpose of this meeting is to show you Excel statements, which is a replacement for FRX or MR. Microsoft has kind of screwed things up on the financial report writer side. They replaced FRX with MR, and then MR had a bunch of bugs and issues and problems, and its performance has been slower than FRX. It's been buggy. It crashes fairly often, and we end up having to rebuild the data mart and go through a bunch of gyrations to get it working again. So it's been a fragile product that Microsoft's now come out and said, hey, we're not going to do any more development on MR, which is basically the kiss of death. That means they're not going to continue with the product. So, and also these products like FRX and MR, when we do an upgrade, they're a major part of the cost of doing an upgrade. So we started looking around. Some of our clients were using Excel statements, and after looking at it, we fell in love with it. And we're recommending it for all our SL customers now. So Excel statements is an Excel-based financial report writer that's live connected to SL. It has drill down ability from within SL. You can look at AP documents or AR documents or GL detail. And it has added functions that it adds to Excel to do some of the things that MR and FRX did well. So, of course, customers warm up to it because it's Excel, and most people know Excel. So it's adopted quickly and tends to get more use because you can send a department manager an Excel spreadsheet that's produced by this package. And since they know Excel, they can use it. They can manipulate the report. They can do drill downs. And you just get better user adoption out of it. Not to mention the nice formatting and graphs and things that you can add with Excel there. So that's why we like this product, and I've asked Jonathan Van Hoot to take a look at this and show us his package. So Peggy just asked to be presenter. I don't think she wants to be presenter, but Peggy, send me another message if you did want to be presenter. And you can unmute yourself. And let's see here now. Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you want to talk. So I encourage you to ask questions and jump in if you need to. So
yes, please.
Okay, yeah. So Jonathan, you want to take over and just do a quick introduction on yourself and get us started?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like Michael said, the really nice thing here is that if you already know how to use Excel, then you're 99% of the way on knowing how to use this. So there's not much new to learn at all, other than what the new functions are that have been added to Excel. And there are only about a dozen of them, and you may only use a couple of those dozen as well. So we have found that it's very easily learned by people who know Excel. And if you don't know Excel, then you're going to be confused straight off here. And so at least at this point, this product is going to be kind of confusing. So I'm just going to start Excel. So I like to just start it fresh to prove there's nothing up my sleeve here. And it makes a little menu here on the review ribbon. And this is mostly optional, but the idea is to try to save you time and let you configure Excel statements to your site as well. So if it's okay with you guys, I just want to quickly create a new report. I'll just create a trial balance report. And I'm using the Solomon demo data, and we call it the Solomon demo data because it dates from 1999, back when Dynamics SL was called Solomon. And this is the demo data that actually ships with Dynamics SL. So if you haven't seen it, that's fine, but you may recognize it. So when I'm creating a report, I always start with this screen. And like I say, this is sort of optional, but it can save you a lot of time and typos and the like. So this is going to let me go and look in my Dynamics SL databases and choose what I'm going to work with for this report. So I'm doing this report just for one company, and you can see the demo data has 5, and then I added another one here too. And so I'm going to, in order for it to get you balances into a financial report, it needs to know what company, what ledger, what account, what sub-account, what fiscal year, and what period. And so this is just an easy way to go and say, oh, I want this company. Oh, these are the ledgers I can choose, and then these are the sub-accounts that are set up for that company as well. And by default, when I insert something, it's going to put a description of that to the right, and it's going to name the cell where I'm inserting this as well, again, at the workbook level. And I'll show you what I mean there. So I clicked Insert, and so I was selecting this company 0060. So it inserted that, it named that cell company ID, and then this is just an Excel statements function here that says go get the company name for that company from your Dynamics SL databases. And so that's what it inserted as the description. And use names means that it used the name that it gave to that cell to refer to it. So I'm going to work with a financial ledger, and it'll always put your actual financial ledger first with an asterisk next to it. So the dummy demo data actually has another ledger called actual, which is a little confusing, but this is the actual ledger being used by the general ledger module. So I'll insert that as well, and you can see it named that ledger ID, and then the name is gotten with, this is just another Excel statements function here to go get the ledger name. For sub-accounts, because I'm doing a trial balance, typically I would just choose all sub-accounts, but you can create a drop-down. So I can say insert this not as just a single value, but insert it as a drop-down list, or insert it as a list across or down as well. So you could insert, a column for each company automatically rather than having to do it manually, or a column for specific ledgers. So your actual, your budget, your forecast, or something like that, by just choosing those ledgers and inserting as a row. And then you can do the same thing with sub-accounts or segments of sub-accounts. And the demo database actually is using 6 separate segments within a sub-account, each of which is a different entity here. And I doubt you guys are using 6 segments. Do you know how many segments you're using and what you're using them for? Is anyone there?
Yeah, I believe it's 2 segments for them.
Okay.
Brian would know that best.
Looks like they're all muted. Okay. You don't have to stay muted. I like feedback and questions. So you could say, oh, I want to drop down of reporting units. And so I can say, make a drop down of reporting units and insert that in here. And as soon as you insert something as a drop down, it creates a sheet called structures, and that's where it keeps the drop down list. Okay, so the only other thing I'm going to do from this screen is I'm going to go in and insert the chart of accounts for this company as well. Okay, so that works similarly. Yeah.
Well, one thing I should point out is that it's more than a financial report writer. As you can see from the budget options are there. A lot of people do pretty sophisticated budgeting with this tool as well.
Yeah, there's a budget. This is an optional module, and this allows you to maintain your budget or statistical ledgers from within Excel, and then update your Dynamics SL, update those in your Dynamics SL databases with one click. So that's great as well, because Dynamics SL has never given a very good way to work with your budgets, and even worse if you're working with statistical ledgers. Statistical ledgers, things like products sold, floor space, FTEs. I'm not exactly sure what your business is, but
membership would be an important thing for them.
Okay, yeah, number of members. We have a lot of membership organizations, and they want to relate maybe their revenue prorated by number of members or particular expense or something like that. And so you can keep those numbers right in the database and access those within your financials just as you would any of your actual financial numbers. And Dynamics SL lets you have as many statistical ledgers as you want as well. And it keeps those with per period, just like it does your financial budgets and the like. So I've entered these three, and you can see it's named those. And just my convention, and again, this is all optional, it's also going to need to know the fiscal year and the period for this report. So I like to name these cells that I'm going to use for those fiscal year and period. And this is the name box in Excel if you don't work with names in Excel. So when I enter something in there, it's now named that cell fiscal year. And again, I said the data is from 1999, and I'm going to name this one period. And the demo data only has transactions in 2 or 3 periods. So I have to go toward the end of the year as well. And so I can do, this will be my beginning balance here. And I'm going to use an Excel statement function, and I'm just going to show you the Excel statements functions that are added to Excel. And I'm actually using a pre-release of the next version. So this has more functions than the current version has. So the current version, the version you would get, has about a dozen. And there are about 4 or 5 new ones in here that are going to be with the next version. And so I want to get my year-to-date balance. So we can see that's one of the functions in here. And I'm not going to fill it in that way. YTD bal. And I just hit tab once I started typing enough that it knew what function I wanted. And then something that I use that nobody uses with Excel, but it's part of Excel, is Control-Shift-A. And so Control-Shift-A in Excel fills in the parameter names that that function needs. So if I did, an Excel function like equal payment, and I did Control-Shift-A, it's gonna tell me, oh, we need the present value, the number of periods, the interest rate, so forth and so on. It's going to fill that out. And by naming these cells with the same names as the parameters, it already knows where to find those. And another nice thing about named ranges is that it's always going to be absolute. So you don't have to remember to put the dollar signs in and so forth to make the reference an absolute reference. And you notice Excel also color codes. And again, this is just part of Excel. So it's color coded saying, oh, company ID, and that's right there. Ledger ID, that's right there. The red one, the purple one, the green one, and so forth, showing you where it's getting all of that. And these are optional parameters here, and I'm not going to use those in this report, but I'll touch on that later, or I'll try to. So I'm just going to delete those. So the only thing that's missing here is account, which is obviously over here since I dropped in the chart of accounts. And then I'm going to cycle through the combinations of absolute and relative using the F4 key because I want absolute column and relative row. Okay, and so there's my beginning balance. And here's where I'm going to put my monthly balance. And I'm just going to use another Excel statement function, period month, Control-Shift-A. It knows where to find those. And so this is showing me that for this demo company, they're on a calendar year, fiscal year, because period 11 is November. And then here I'm going to put PTD bal, Control-Shift-A. Again, I need to give it the account. F4, 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 and I'm not going to use these optional parameters. Okay, so actually I made a mistake here. My beginning balance isn't going to be the year-to-date through November. It's going to be the year-to-date through the prior period. So I'm going to subtract 1 from the period there. Okay, and then I'm going to say, oh, my ending balance. And you can see what a great typist I am. That's one reason why I use that insert from SL. Otherwise, I would have made a few typos at this point. So my ending balance, I just like to do it this way to remind you, you're still in Excel. So everything you have available in Excel, you still have available when you add Excel statements to Excel. And then I'm going to double click. This is called the fill handle if you don't use it in Excel. I'll double click on that, and that will automatically copy down until, oh, and I've got manual calculation on. I should turn that off. Let's go turn that off. Go to automatic. So when you double click on the fill handle, it copies down until it sees nothing to its left, which is exactly what we wanted to do in this case. So it stopped when it got to that last account. And so I'm essentially done with my trial balance report here. Obviously, I can go in and put my subtotals in, clean it up a little, which I'm starting to do now. View, freeze panes. So let's center these, and let's give them a different color as well. Okay, so so making your financial reports is pretty much that easy. Your row formats from FRX or Management Reporter is represented by what you put in here, and you can use mass, lists, and ranges just as you can in those other products. And the way that works is if I say I want all accounts beginning with 103, I do that, and you can see this number changed. And so that's a mask, and I can use what we call a list. So I can say, oh, also include account 1160. So I'm adding to the list. So I semicolon, I put another account number in, and it's now including that as well. And then ranges, again, if you use Excel, this will seem pretty obvious. So I'll say accounts 1200 through 1250. Okay, so the range, you just use a colon like you would with a range in Excel. And my number changes again. And I can also say except for, which is the dash. So I can say, oh, except for account 1031. So I'm removing that from either a mask or a range that I already gave it. And again, the number changes again. And Michael mentioned that you can drill down. You can drill down where you're using PTD BAL. We deliberately don't have drill down with YTD BAL, just as a way that you can prevent someone from just getting way too much data when they drill down. But there's a way around that, and we've got several clients, it seems like mostly not-for-profits, that never use YTD BAL at all. They just use PTD BAL to get their YTD BAL. And you can do that by doing a dash. So here, that means through period 11. And so if I do that, then now we're seeing, essentially YTD BAL for period 11. And so, like I said, people will do that just so they can drill down in it. So by drill down, my first level drill down is it expands out all the account, sub-account, and perhaps period combinations that went into that balance. So it's essentially expanding out based on this mask and this mask over here. And this is the mask we're using for sub-accounts, which essentially says all sub-accounts. And so this is showing us then any account, sub-account combinations that had transactions in that period. And you can see the second one here it had transactions in that period, but they net to 0. So it's not contributing to the balance, but there are still transactions in that account sub-account combination. And then the second level drill down, this is where we can get our GL detail. So this is going to give you what you see in your GL detail report now in Dynamics SL, or if you're using drill down reports in FRX or MR, again, the same thing you see there. And unfortunately, the demo data posts in summary, so that's why we're seeing asterisks here. Posting in summary means it collapses up all the transactions in the batch to that particular account sub-account, and therefore we put asterisks in to denote the fact that we don't know, that it may be collapsed, so we don't know what the reference number is, because there may be multiple reference numbers in there. Same thing with projects tasks. I don't know if you're using the project series or not. And if you're not posting in summary, which I'm certainly assuming that you're not posting in summary, that's what this column is showing, that all of these are posted in summary, then your AP batches are going to show you your vendor ID, your vendor name. Your AR batches are going to show you your customer ID and your customer name, and so forth. So it's showing you that at the detail level as well, at the GL level, which Dynamics SL does not do by default. We also, instead of just showing you the tran type codes, we expand that out and give you a description for the transaction types as well. And so this is just, the first or the second level drill down. And then we have another drill down level that we kind of call the audit drill down. Oh, and this little, if you know what that little red corner is, that means there's an Excel comment on that. And if I hover over it, it's showing me what that comment is. And what that is if you're using notes in Dynamics SL, the little, I don't know what version you're using, but prior to version 2018, they were little yellow, look like Post-it notes on the transaction screens. So you can enter notes at a batch level, document level, transaction level. And so this is showing us that there was a batch level note put on that particular AP batch. And then I can drill down, I can just click anywhere on this row, and that's going to open the entire batch at the subsidiary level, the subsidiary ledger level. And so this is not just showing me the account sub-account that I was drilling down from, but it's showing me the entire batch that that particular account sub-account was part of.
Hey, John.
Okay, so like I said, this is like an audit. Yeah.
If they use the document attached, does it show the document as well?
Yeah, the attachment. Yeah. Yeah, I set one of those up. Let's see, if I go to period 12, and keep your eye on how quickly this is going to refresh this report. So I changed the period. So now we're seeing that same report for the next period. So it's gone and gotten us all new numbers because now we're looking at period 12. And what did that take? About a second. And so in one of my expense accounts down here, I'm going to see. I just had to move my, you can't see it, but my GoToMeeting, I had it lodged over on the left. Here we go. Okay, so my travel expense, I'm going to drill down, and then I'm going to drill down into this batch. And yeah, so we have a note at the document level, and we also have a note on this particular transaction. And so here's the note at the document level, and since this is the same document, we're seeing the same note on both lines. And then on this particular transaction, we can see there's a note, but it also says attachment. And so if I double click on this, it's going to open that attachment as well. So again, this would be a receipt that you scanned in. It could be, if you're doing like a general journal entry that's based on an Excel workbook that you created, you can attach that Excel workbook and then drill down from within Excel statements and open that workbook that you use to create that batch.
Hey, John, a little note here for FOP. If we aren't using the notes attachment and the document attachment, that's a standard feature in SL now, and we want to start exploiting that. It's very powerful.
Yeah. getting, scanning a receipt and getting it into Dynamics SL, that's a whole other discussion. Attaching a file that you've already got is as easy as going and browsing to the file and attaching it to your Dynamics SL transaction. But if you've got a vendor invoice in your hand, getting that into Dynamics SL, that's something completely different. So it's either easy or involved depending on really what you're trying to do there. I'm just going to go back up to the top. So you can see mask lists and ranges. So I'm using a mask, I'm using a range, I'm using a list, and then I'm also accepting from, in this case, a mask. And this is similar, obviously, to the link to GL value in your row format in FRX, which is called the link to financial dimension in Management Reporter. I'm not sure whether you're using Management Reporter or FRX right now, but it's essentially the same idea there. And the column layout that can be pretty complex in FRX or Management Reporter is super simple in Excel statements. All you need to do is just, use your period to date balance function and tell it what ledger you want, tell it what period you want, and you can use things like, period -1 or fiscal year -1, and that's all you need to do to get the typical columns you want in a report. And something like a variance, you know how to use Excel, that's a super easy formula to create in Excel. Much less complexity as far as the columns go. And then we have this drill down, the drop down. And remember, I created a drop down by, I don't remember what it was, location, region, whatever. And so that's created this little drop down. So I can go in and change that. And we expose this, so it's the reporting unit, that's what I made the drop down on. We expose this on this little structure sheet. And you can probably figure out that this is the replacement for the reporting tree in FRX or MR, is that we have this fully editable, and this is an Excel table that we create on the structure sheet, and this is where that drop-down comes from. So you can go ahead and edit this to your heart's content. If you say, oh, we always look at these two reporting units together, just go ahead and make a list of the two. So we'll copy this, Control C, and I'll add it to this, Control V, okay? And so now for default, it's including both, and I can go and take that other one out of my list that easily. And so now when I pull that down, then it's got this list of sub-account masks that it's using to go get these numbers. You can see all the numbers changed because it's now only showing balances that are in reporting unit 00, reporting unit 01. And obviously the list always has all as the first choice as well. So we definitely encourage you, if you're doing, let's say, a P&L or a actual budget versus actual by departments or something, to use the drop-down list for that, rather than making a separate worksheet or a separate workbook for each, because this is going to be much faster for Excel statements to just go and, go get that one now, as opposed to having to recalculate everything if you create a separate worksheet for each. And Michael mentioned that for internal reporting, again, like a budget versus actual report, this is really neat because you can create a budget versus actual report once and then store it in a shared location. And when you save it as read-only in Excel. If you don't know how to do that, learn how to do that. So you save that budget versus actual report once in a shared location that the department managers can access. And then we have something called compartmental security. And what you do is, for the login names, the Windows login names for those department managers, you go and you put a filter in that, you would typically use a mask here, and you say, oh, department is our second segment, so they can look at anything from the first segment, but only their own department in the second segment. So you do something like that if this person is responsible for the ADM department. And then when those users open, again, that same report, they're only seeing their own numbers. And when they drill down, they only see transactions coded to their own departments. So that saves you from having to schedule, generate, and distribute those internal reports. Plus, those managers can then drill down and see the detail behind the numbers on the report that that they're going and getting. And they can look at past periods, they can look at future periods. And for internal reports like that, one of those options on the balance functions was called include unposted, or the first option. So in an internal report, we usually suggest for include unposted, make that true. I deleted it from the function. Just gonna get out of here. So equals PTD bal, Control Shift A, so you can see included unposted. So I just deleted these optional arguments, and if you delete them, it takes it as false. So include unposted, if I leave it off, means false. If I make that true, then it's going to include all transactions from released batches, not just posted batches, and that includes batches in future periods where obviously you haven't been able to post yet. So that's kind of neat, particularly if your posting is held up and a department head wants to look at, hey, where do I stand in this particular expense month to date? So even though you haven't posted, they're going to be able to see that. And obviously they can see the budget as well from the budget ledger. Budget ledger doesn't have posting, so that's always going to be visible. The other optional ones here, oh, and by the way, you can put in a U for include unposted. It has to be quote U unquote, or quote U quote, and that will give you unposted only, which can be kind of handy. Maybe in a trial balance or something, you're looking at the end of the month and you want to see, are there any unposted numbers in there? You can make a column for that. So net, you can use a D or a C to see just debits or just credits. So if this was a real old school trial balance, I could have had a column for debits and a column for credits, and then use a D or C there for each of those as well. You can also say net, you can put a true in here, and that will treat any natural debit account as a negative. So the idea there is, again, this would be a typical internal report where you're combining, let's say, income and expense accounts in the same line. So in your list of accounts, you've got both miscellaneous expenses and miscellaneous income, and then you're just calling it miscellaneous over here. You'd want to say true for net, and then it'll treat that expense as a negative. And then consol, do you guys have more than one company?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Are those in separate databases or in the same database in Dynamics SL?
Separate.
Separate? Okay. So the consol, I mean, it's really there for doing consolidation, but we have clients with only one company that use it extensively as well. And that's in my insert from SL. You notice I have a consolidation tab here, and the project tab, this is coming from the next version. So version 3 is going to have an option. I don't know if you're using the project series, but it'll have an option to do project reporting as well as financial reporting. So consolidation, then I can go and work on account classes, or more to the point for consolidation, I can work with consolidation accounts and consolidation sub-accounts. And you probably don't know what those are, but they're in GL in your chart of accounts maintenance. And so there are account classes available to be used in General Ledger, but Dynamics SL and Solomon have never used those. So they set this up, but they've never used it for anything. So you can set up account classes in GL, and a typically used for this, even if you're not consolidating, would be when you're doing summary reporting. You can go set up essentially the rows that you want to see on your summary report, give them IDs and give them names, and then in your chart of accounts, for each account, you can go and assign it one of those classes that you set up. So these are the classes that were set up, and so we can go and put every account in the relevant class and then drive a report, a summary report, based on those classes. You can also use that for consolidation. So you may have a lot in your account classes, but if you're working with companies with different charts of accounts, you can use the class ID in your financial report to know that even if they have different account numbers, you know, cash is going to be the same class ID in both, and then you use your class IDs over here rather than your accounts to drive your consolidation report. So Dynamics SL also has, and these are essentially free fields, consol account, and then your sub-account maintenance has a consol sub-account. And your consol account it's a 10-character free field, and in your sub-account maintenance, it's a 24-character free field. And you can use this as well here to drive consolidation reporting. So if you have different sub-account structures or different sub-account lists in two different companies, but you know how you want to combine those when you're consolidating, you just create like a dummy account that you consolidate those into. And then if you have that same dummy account on in both companies, you then use your consol sub-account for your drop-down or your different columns if you want a different column for, you know, each department or entity or something. So you've got these free fields you can use as well, and that's what we're seeing here. So these are the consolidation accounts. These are the consolidation sub-accounts that have been used in the databases that I'm working with here. And I can, you know, I can select a couple of different databases. I have to say I'm going to insert it as some kind of list. And then on my consolidation, again, it's going to include all of those. And since these are in the same database, oh, yours aren't. So let's go grab one that's in a different database. Okay, so now when I go to consolidation, you can then see which company that's coming from and what the account number was in that company. Yeah, same here. And then down here as well.
Hey, Jonathan, can I make a point?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, a neat thing here is that Excel statements knows Dynamics SL. I mean, it's written specifically for Dynamics SL. So they add some value in telling us how to use SL best to maximize the report. So that's some value add. And then second, with their support plan, they answer questions by email for Excel and SL. So
Excel statements.
You don't
Not
have
SL.
to worry that you know, a lot of these features might be Excel related, not necessarily Excel statements related or SL. So they'll answer all those questions, you know, to help you get the best reporting, whether it's an Excel question or an Excel statements question.
Right. We found because this is such a part of Excel, I mean, it just gloms into and becomes part of Excel, that people often can't make a distinction between, you know, what they're trying to use in Excel and what they're trying to use in Excel statements. And so we'll answer any Excel question. You know, it doesn't have to be specifically about Excel statements because, you know, as I said, a lot of people don't necessarily realize where Excel statements ends and Excel begins or vice versa. So, okay, so I'm not sure what else you'd want to see. I'll show you options.
Hey,
so these are drill down.
I got a question, Jonathan. Do you have any,
Yep.
you know, standard reports already done that they can see?
Sure.
Kind of show them what it can do.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a balance sheet. I don't know if that's in my recently open files or not. There we go. I opened it last week in another demo. So this is a balance sheet that was created with Excel statements, and we've saved it in a format much like you would print it from Excel. And of course, as Mike mentioned, you know how to format things in Excel. So you don't have to learn any special language for, make this larger or make it bold or whatever. So all that you already know how to do. There's nothing new to learn. And then obviously the subtotals here, just Excel functions that we use. Oh, and that should be the same format here. So, oh, it's there. There. I just wanted to get that line there. So, so this is, just what you'd print out for your board packet or your bank as your balance sheet. And I've hidden column A, which is where those accounts are. And you can see how we're using mass lists and ranges over here to drive the balance sheet. And here, again, you can see what we're using for company, ledger ID, sub-account, fiscal year, and period. So you want to create this for December. It's as easy as changing that. And then again, I could re-hide this, or you can just set your print area not to include that first column if you widen it enough so it doesn't overlap. Yeah, so this is not much harder to create than that trial balance that I created for you. And for last year, and again, the dummy data only has 1 year, so we just did fiscal year -1. So this is the same formulas I've got here, and we just copied it over and just put a -1 after each fiscal year, and there's our last year. And what I did here also is for drill down, again, we don't really want to see tremendous amount of detail. In this case, it would be 12 months worth of detail if I use PTD-BAL, but we do want to see drill down for this particular period for December. So I added together year-to-date balance up to the prior period, and then I added to that the current period PTD-BAL. So I can drill down in this number, and I'm only seeing period 12, since that's the period I'm on. So that's just another trick that you can use as well. So if you want drill down in a balance sheet, but you don't want, when I double click here, I don't want to see all, in this case, all 12 periods worth, which may be hundreds or thousands of rows. This is just one way to do that. And I think we've did a blog post on our blog about this as well, about how to do this. And again, variance or change is super easy because you're in Excel. So I think you probably can figure out how to do something like that. And something like a percentage, percentage of total assets or something like that. You know how to do that as well. It's as easy as this divided by, well, in this case, I always like to make sure I use the right absolute and relative, because I may want to copy this column to do something slightly different, and then divided by, and then do this, and then here you want to make sure that you're using the absolute, and then format this as a percentage. Again, I'm sure I'm not showing you anything new as far as what you can do with Excel. It's just pointing out that something that would be not much fun, or that would require a lot of special knowledge to do in FRX or MR, is super easy for you to do in Excel statements because you know how to use Excel. So I was showing you, these are some of the options you have in drill down. And when version 2 came out over a year ago, we switched this around. We understood at that point from looking at hundreds of companies at what people were typically using, and so we made all the defaults unchecked. So if you want to change from a default, you can check one of these, hide notes, so you're not seeing those notes on your reports. you hide the entity name. So make it like a Dynamics SL report where you're not seeing the vendor ID and the vendor name at the GL level, that sort of thing. We let you check to see if any new accounts have been added, that you may need to edit your report to make sure those are included if you add new accounts. And then I mentioned the security as well. And the sexy one is the one I showed you, the compartmental security, where you can set those filters up for your internal users and share the same report and make it self-service for them where they're only seeing their own numbers. We also have modular security, and you can use either or both of these. And modular security limits how far people can drill down into detail. So you can limit someone from drilling down into that last audit drill down level as well. So let's see, what else is in here? We can do a hide zeros. Let's do that one on here. So I'm going to go and select a range. This would be something you might typically want on a report like this. I'm going to go into report, and I'm going to set that as my non-zero range. And so what that's done now is all those rows that only had zeros are now not in the report anymore. They're hidden. So you can see it's hidden rows 19 and 20. We can see it skips from 18 to 21 here, from 21 to 24, because those rows only had zeros in them. And now this little button is enabled, so I can hide or unhide now that I have that range set. Okay, and that range could be discontiguous, or I could have selected, you know, the entire block here down. And it's smart enough not to hide a row like this, a formatting row. It's not going to hide that. It's looking for rows that have formulas in them that create numbers. And if every formula in that row that creates a number within the range that you identified has a zero, then it's going to hide that row for you.
Hey, John, let me step in here for a second. Diane or Peggy, you or even Aaron from the IT side, do you have any general questions that this has brought up you want us to cover?
I guess I'll talk first, and then if Diane or Peggy want to chime in, they can. I don't have any specific questions, Michael. As you know, I don't deal with the day-to-day nitty-gritty stuff, which is very interesting, and I appreciate the demo that you've provided so far, Jonathan. I guess from my point of view, administratively and even from the IT perspective, certainly, as Jonathan stated, we're more familiar with Excel overall, and use it for so many other things than just within Solomon. And the fact that Dynamics and Microsoft has decided to move away from the other products, I think this is pretty much a no-brainer for us moving forward. The details that Michael will get to Denise and we'll discuss, of course, will determine how quickly, and then part of that detail will be, how we move forward as far as, converting our existing reports and how much training is involved in maybe some specific new report writing. But clearly this is the way we need to go, especially as we've discussed with Michael. Our newest board is looking for more detail in reports and more customability, more customization in reports. So I don't think there's any question from my perspective that we want to move over to this platform. And perhaps, some more detailed training and some more detailed examples would probably be better served, after we get to that point.
Yeah, we'll help with that. And just kind of give you a rule of thumb, we're finding it takes about 2 hours for us to convert an existing FRX MR report over to Excel statements. So in some cases, the customer's got some strong Excel people, and they just run with it. I mean, the training is usually about a half an hour or a review of what Jonathan's already covered, and they're off and running. But if you guys need a jump start, you want to get your base of reports over quickly, then we can do those for you at roughly 2 hours per report.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I certainly. Go ahead.
Are you using FRX now?
No, it's MR, isn't it?
Oh, it is?
Yeah, we
Okay.
switched. Yeah, we're on MR.
Okay. Well, you switch to this, you can do away with that whole data mart, all the synchronization, all of that other code that's in there. And so it's going to speed up Dynamics SL for you as well. And then you're not going to have that added baggage of the data mart out there at all, the other database. This works directly off of your Dynamics SL databases.
Yeah, we've actually had MR come close to filling up server drives, so that added space would be nice to get back.
Yeah, and processing power. I've seen sites where they've had to add RAM and maybe even a second server for their MR data mart. And obviously you don't need anything like that here, and you can get that extra hardware you pay for back. Okay, so I went in here, disconnect. This lets you disconnect an Excel statements report from Excel.
Hey,
So if
Jonathan,
you need to,
I think unless we've got additional questions from Diane or Peggy, we're
okay.
probably good enough.
Okay.
I'll give this recording to Denise, who had a air conditioning unit blowout and had to miss this meeting. But I'll review this recording with her, and then she'll have probably some more specific questions that you and I'll go over, or maybe we have to demo a couple specific things just for her. But
Yeah.
Diane or Peggy, do you have any other questions?
Sound asleep.
Yes, I see Diane on.
I'm going to say that's a no.
Okay. Yeah, and I can cover, if you're interested in the budget option, I can cover that later. That takes a little while on its own anyway.
Okay. All right, let me run this video past Denise when she gets back in tomorrow or the next day, and then I'll work with Aaron and the rest of the team here to work out the implementation details, which are small, by the way, and get you guys something you can make a decision on.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, we'll wrap it up. Jonathan, I appreciate your time. I think this helps us.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you both.